Our Montreal insider, our Habs insider, Eric Engels, has just landed at LAX. Is that indeed correct, Mr. Engels?
Yeah, it is. You could set your clock to it, Timmy. Whenever I plan a vacation, and by the way, I planned this vacation well in advance. I had a family wedding in Sonoma, which was amazing. But whenever, invariably, I go on vacation, there's huge breaking news from the Canadiens. They moved their golf tournament up a week because they couldn't reserve Laval-sur-le-Lac, where they play every year at their annual golf tournament. All the players were in town early, so it was an easy thing for them to do. But I had a feeling, I had an inclination that this morning would happen and they might name a captain, and I thought it might be Suzuki. Sure enough, it is. So you said media on hand. I wasn't there. I won't be back in Montreal until Friday, but I wasn't surprised by the news. Let's put it that way.
Let me before we get into Suzuki, didn't we get you on vacation or in Vegas when Michel Therrien went down? Like, what's going on here?
First, the bye week, like the first year the bye week was instituted, I think I took a trip to Vegas for 3-4 days with a buddy to go play golf. I played the front nine. I was 40 on the front nine of par 36. I was really happy. And then I hit the 10th hole and I got a call from somebody who sharpened skates in Montreal at a store and called me and said, they're going to fire Michel Therrien. I was like, yeah, whatever. And they were like, and he was like, Claude Julien is going to be the coach. And I was like, okay, sure. And then 15 minutes later it happened and I got off the course and almost got pulled over by a cop calling you guys to get on the show. So let's put this in the pantheon of hilarious hits we've done together. I'm here with my buddy Jerome. Jerome.
What's going on, Jerome?
He picked me up from the airport.
Nice.
We have a big week planned.
Yeah.
But it's fun to join you guys always.
Well, I'm glad Jerome could join us on this. Well, listen, we've crossed some borders with you. We've had a Rosh Hashanah dinner with your family. What the hell happened when we called you on Rosh Hashanah?
That was the best. The whole family was blown away. We still talk about it around the table. Rosh Hashanah is coming up soon, so I'm sure we'll rehash the memory back in the good old days with you and Sid, and a lot of laughs, and we'll share many more as we move along.
I feel like that was the Pacioretty trade, man. The timing on these things for you has not worked out. But let's get into Nick Suzuki, captain. You mentioned it didn't surprise you. Obviously, when I ask the question, I get most of my Montreal information from reading your columns, so it didn't surprise either of us that Nick Suzuki was named captain.
Yeah, my editor, Rory Boylan at Sportsnet, was like, we should do like a 5 storylines kind of thing heading into the year, what we're focusing on. And I said, well, the captaincy will be number 1, and I'll lead that for a Sunday piece. And I wrote about how, there was kind of 2 ways to skin this cat. Does anybody skin cats anymore? But anyways,
so, yeah.
It was like, are the Canadiens reluctant to, they feel he's going to be the guy? Are they reluctant to name him the guy at 23 years old, make him the youngest captain, and do it in the first year of an 8-year, $63 million deal, heap a bit more pressure on his shoulders?
Right.
And if they are, they've got Joel Edmondson, who's got 2 years left on his deal, who emerged as a real leader in Shea Weber's absence, despite his own absence with a back injury for the first half of last season. Everybody was talking about him, and Brendan Gallagher is a natural fit. I thought it was really, hearing all the clips from the golf tournament today, to hear Brendan Gallagher call Nick Suzuki the heartbeat of the Canadiens was really fascinating to me. He's got 5 years left on his deal. Making him the captain, knowing that Suzuki would be eventually, would mean going to him and saying, hey, Brendan, a couple of years down the line, if you don't mind warming this seat for those 2 years, we're going to give it to Nick down the line when we feel he's more ready for it. But the other way of looking at it, and the way I felt that they would go with it, just based on how the players feel about Suzuki, how, we've come to understand who Nick Suzuki is, he's got more points per game in the playoffs than he does in the regular season. And that's a function of how he steps up in the big moments. And I think if you're the Canadiens management and you believe that he was going to be the guy down the line, why would you believe that this would be extra pressure, or that he wouldn't thrive under that pressure, despite going into a contract that's, paying him big money, mostly for his potential? It was signed by the previous administration. I think it's just a bold move by this new management group, which has shown, time and time again in a very short period of time, that they're not afraid to make bold moves.
No. Est-ce qu'il parle français?
Un petit peu.
Right.
He said that he's taking some lessons and that he reads the language much better than he speaks it, but it's something he'll work on. The first words that came out of his mouth this morning came out in French. I think in Quebec, as somebody myself, I'm born and raised in Montreal, so I am bilingual. I get paid to do radio in French, which is a fascinating thing to me, and it's hilarious to me because my French is good and I'm fluent, but it's not so good as people would mistake me for being French. And yet I know that what's most important to the people of the province is that you make an effort. Yeah. And I think they're going to get that from Suzuki, who understands this role.
Understood. What kind of guy is Suzuki?
Great question, because I think what everybody sees is this even-keeled, calm, humble Canadiana type dude, right? Yeah. And he is all those things. But what was very clear from him from the first day that I met him in Montreal to how he's evolved here is he knows exactly how good he is. You know, he's not cocky, and he will not come out and say, well, I was great tonight. And this, he's not that guy, but he does know how good he is, and he's really good. And when it comes to the big moments, he is the type of guy that wants to be put on the ice with a minute left and wants to be, you know, the game's on the line. We're up by a goal and we've got to protect the lead. He wants to be that guy, and he wants to be the guy to go get them the goal that they need to tie the game and go score it in overtime and win it. And it's one thing to want to be that guy. It's another thing to be perfectly comfortable in that role, which is exactly what he's shown. You go back to the bubble playoffs and the huge goals that he scored to propel the Canadiens as the 24th team into the 2014 dance. You know, everybody was kind of like, okay, this is for real. We saw evidence of it in junior as he exploded with Guelph in that final, you know, run that he was in the junior league for in the OHL. He takes that to the NHL right away as a rookie, and then the Stanley Cup playoff run leads the team in scoring again. Right. It's symbolic of exactly who he is and the character that he has. And I'll tell you, he is universally respected in that room. You know, it's not just the players saying the right things on the day where he gets named captain. I spoke to Ben Sherratt the day that he got traded to Florida for a little exclusive that we did on Sportsnet, and he just said, there's no question in my mind this guy will be captain of the Montreal Canadiens. And you heard Jake Allen this morning say, you know, if it had gone to a player's vote, it would have been probably unanimous that we were choosing him. So it speaks to the level of respect that's there. Management sees it, coaching staff sees it, and wish Nick Suzuki good luck, because it's a hard job.
Yeah. Without a doubt. And I even said, when you're talking about pressure, all I could think about was when they brought back Drouin and they said they were going to play him at center. And I sat here and I said, man, this is a lot of pressure that you're heaping on a guy coming back to his home province. And that speaks to, listen, when you mention the run, obviously the mind goes to how good Carey Price was and how big a part Shea Weber was of that run to the Stanley Cup final. Both of them are gone. With that in mind, what are the expectations heading into this year?
Great question. Joel Edmondson kind of was really interesting today, saying, you know, the rebuild was last year, and you know we're aiming to make the playoffs, and it'll be a failure if we don't. And well, you know, like I don't want to pour cold water on any of that. It's nice to be optimistic, and if you're a player of the team, that should be your mentality. There's no question under Martin St. Louis they're going to be a lot more competitive than people would expect. I think you look at the back end, which Joel Edmondson is a part of. You have David Savard there, you have Mike Matheson, you have Chris Weidman, and a bunch of kids who have real promise to become good players, but are not necessarily there in the development curve. Carey Price, as you mentioned his name, is sitting on the sidelines on long-term IR, while Jake Allen, who had 2 serious groin injuries last year, will be leaned on heavily in net, and he did a good job when he was healthy, but you know, he's 32 years old, and they're going to need to rely on Samuel Montembeault, who is up and down and maybe a bit more impressive than people would have imagined when he was picked up on waivers by the Canadiens. Caden Primo's kind of waiting in the wings. What they have on the back end and in the net would suggest that it's going to be a tough season for them, especially in the division they're in. And we know who the front runners are in that class. We know that there's some up-and-coming teams in Buffalo and Ottawa and even Detroit, which took some strides last year. Boston, I don't know how everybody sees them in the equation, but if you have Toronto, Tampa, and Florida at the top, Boston with Bergeron, Krejci coming back, will try to make it, you know, a really last dance, so to speak, not to lean into all that terminology where you're past all that. But look, it's I don't know where the Canadiens see themselves. I just believe that they believe they'll be a lot more competitive. You have so many guys that are out for redemption. There's plenty of motivation. I think there's going to be an incredible amount of compelling stories coming out of this market, which is good news for me because I'll be back there soon enough to cover it all.
Awesome. Enjoy the trip to LA, or the rest of the trip to LA. Merci, Eric. Merci, Jerome. Appreciate you guys doing this with us. Salut. Be good.
You're the man, Timmy. Thank you.